everyone. Hope you guys are doing well. I know now we're into week 3, not being able to hang out. I know it's been probably long for you guys sitting at home, so I wanted to encourage you again. Just remember, we'll get through this. God is in control, so even in this time, just keep praying, keep seeking Him. We'll get through it. Something that I found while I was preparing this message that I wanted to share as encouragement is Psalms 91:1. It says, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty." So what this is saying is when we are dwelling with God, when we're seeking Him, when we're spending time with Him, when we're stressed out and we go in and pray, we're dwelling in His shelter. And it says you abide in His shadow. To abide in His shadow means you gain all the benefits of being with Him. That's His joy, His comfort, His peace, His caring for you, His love. So in this time, remember, seek God because He is in control. He is there. He's going to help us through this. We're going to get through it. It's just a season, as weird as it seems and as hard as it can be for us. So this message really came about literally the day after we made the video for the first message, the first week. I was praying about it and trying to figure out what do we need to talk about? What matters right now? And the next day I get home from work and I'm like, we need to talk about fear. Right now people are afraid. They're terrified. They're panic buying. They're worried. They're anxious. They're stressed. And so fear is real for us all. I don't think anyone is not afraid to some level. Maybe it is just worried. Maybe they're trying to act macho and not show it, but to some extent, everybody is concerned and worried about what's going on. And I wanted to talk about fear. I want to talk about what fear is to some extent and what God has to say about it and how we deal with it a little bit. And hopefully it helps give you guys some comfort in this time and helps you to navigate it if you're dealing with any of those things, be it anxiety and worry or stress. So the first thing we need to understand about fear is you can think of it as a two-sided coin. On one side, it's the good side of fear, and the other is the bad. With fear, the good side of fear it's from God. It's an emotion, and it's what keeps us alive. Fear is one of those things that goes with your conscience where if you get worried and you're like, maybe I shouldn't do this, I might get hurt. That's a good side of fear. But the bad side of fear is when we allow it to get out of control, when we allow it to go unchecked. That is like our anxiety and our worry or being stressed. That's when fear turns into something it shouldn't. That's where it becomes unhealthy. Because things like stress, you can stress yourself to the point of getting ulcers or even into a hospital. One of the guys I work with has been to the hospital twice in the last 2 years due to stress. He got ulcers. It's when you're leaving whatever is stressing you, whatever you're afraid of, unchecked. It's allowing it to fester and you're dwelling on it. We can't allow ourselves to allow this fear to go unchecked. We need to remind ourselves of the promises from God. We need to keep it in check and go, okay, what is really the worst that's going to happen? And deal with that, rather than just sitting there and continuing to worry and worry and worry, which is unhealthy. The next thing you need to understand about fear is something I learned about a year ago, and it's fear is a shadow, nothing more than a shadow. Let me explain that. A shadow can touch you, but you really can't feel it other than the coolness from it. You can't grab a shadow. You can't move it. It has no substance. But you can control a shadow. You can turn a light on and remove it. You can move it. You have some ability over it. And a shadow can control you because sometimes we become afraid of a shadow. Think of a kid who is afraid of a shadow on the wall. Fear is like that. Fear can touch you. You can feel fear. It's something that's real. But you can't grab it and move it with your hands. But you can control it. You can sit there and think, I'm not going to allow this to turn into something it's not. I'm not going to allow my fear to debilitate me or to control me to that amount. And fear can control you. But the reason I call it a shadow is we need to remember that it is just a shadow. It's not really going to harm you. It's the thing that you're afraid of behind it that could harm you. So let me make an example. I have a fear of heights. So if we were to go to Castle Danger, Minnesota, that's on the North Shore. It's an extremely tall cliff overlooking Lake Superior. My fear of heights would be healthy because it'd keep me from the edge. That's a good side of fear. But the fear of the height is not what would harm me. It's the falling off the edge of the cliff that would actually harm me. That is why fear is a shadow. It's the thing behind it that might hurt us. But oftentimes our fear is illogical. It's irrational. It's blown out of proportion and not healthy because of that. And so I want you to remember that, yes, it's a time to be concerned, but we need to keep that in check. We need to remind ourselves of the good things. We need to remind ourselves that, you know what? We have great health care. We have scientists that are working around the clock to figure this all out. We have a government that's trying to do the best to minimize it and to remove what's going on right now and to protect us. So we're going to be okay. Which leads us to the verses I wanted to show you. This is also Psalms 91. This is God talking to us about fear and about situations and not needing to fear them. So Psalms 91 verse 5 and 6 says, "You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrows that fly by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the destruction that wastes at noonday." So the first one, you will not fear the terror at night. Literally, fear and terror are related words, so that's you will not fear the fears at night. Some of those things are real. Some things at night we do need to be afraid of. We do need to be wise about being around them. That would be like lions in the Serengeti of Africa. We don't need to fear them here. They're not here. They're in Africa. But if we were there, we would need to be wise and probably not go out at night walking through the Serengeti. So those are a real terror at night, but God's saying don't allow your imagination to make it into something it's not. Don't be overly afraid of something that isn't there or you're not in front of, going out into that Serengeti. And if you were led out there, understand that God's with you in that. There's other terrors at night. Some of them are imaginary. It's like a child who turns the lights off in the basement and runs upstairs because they're afraid of the dark. They're afraid of what they think is down there. And it's probably not really there. It's really not there. Those are the terrors at night. If you were to go sit in the woods in Minnesota, you might have the opportunity to hear a gosh awful screech. It sounds terrifying. It sounds like a monster. It sounds like something that's going to come and eat you. But if you were to investigate it, you'd find out it's a screech owl. A smaller owl that isn't going to hunt you, isn't going to harm you, wants nothing to do with you. So the irrational side of fear is this sounds like some monster in the dark, but the reality is it's a bird that's not going to hurt you. And so God, I think, is saying there to us, hey, you don't need to fear those things. Even if they're real, trust me and be smart, be wise. Don't go in, you know what, I don't need to fear anything. I'm going to go walk through the Serengeti of Africa at night. Not a good decision. The next part, nor the arrows that fly by day. Now, arrows are things you can see, and they're targeted at you. This would be like people's words, people's gossip, people trying to sabotage you, people trying to attack you. Those are arrows. I struggle with this one. At work, I worry about is people going to my boss and saying that I'm doing a bad job, and are they bad-mouthing me? Am I not doing enough? Yet I'm worried about something that's irrational and really not there. And even if they are going to him, I need to trust that God is defending me and that God is taking care of me and helping me through that. To not worry about is somebody really bad-mouthing you. God's saying, hey, if you're serving me, if you're following me, you're going to be okay. The next one, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness. This is COVID-19. It's a pestilence. It's a plague, or it's a virus, or it's a disease. And what's interesting is it says in the darkness. If you think about COVID-19, you can't see it, you can't touch it, as in feel it, you can't smell it, and you can't taste it, but it's there. We just don't know where. And so it's in the darkness. It's out there, and that's where I think people are afraid. They're afraid that they're going to get it somewhere because they don't know it's there. But God's saying you don't need to live in fear of this. You need to keep your eyes on Him and trust Him and trust that He's going to get you through this, that we're going to be okay. Now again, it doesn't mean to be unwise. We still need to be wise about what we're doing. But we don't need to live in a constant state of panic or fear over something we can't control. And that is where fear becomes unhealthy, is when we allow it to fester because we can't control it, but we want to. The last one here. This one I also want to direct towards your parents. I'm hoping they're listening in with you. I'm hoping you guys are doing small group questions together. This last one we all can see right now. It's the destruction at noonday. That is school closures, no sports, no extracurricular activities. It's no graduation ceremonies. Those are destructions. It's the changing of our society. It's job closures, people getting laid off, people getting furloughed from jobs, people getting pay reductions at work, hour cuts. It's our 401ks diminishing, retirement funds being hurt by what's going on. It's our economy seeming to crash. That's the destruction at noonday. God is saying you don't need to fear that. And here's why. When we build our foundation on those things, our job, our retirement, our school, our friends, those things fail. They're like the legs of a table. And when that leg gets chopped out, the table's unstable. But our foundation is not on those things, it's on God. He is in control. He's taking care of us. He is there in all of this. I wanted to look it up. I didn't get the time. But if you look at the Great Depression, most of those people survived it. And I think most of those people were still able to retire in the long run. They might have had to work a little longer. They might not have had as much as they did before, but they got through it. This is a lot like that, and it's probably nowhere near as bad as the Great Depression in any way, shape, or form. But God is in control. Like He was then, He is now. So stop worrying about something you can't control and trust Him. Keep your eyes on God, not on the problem. Keep your eyes looking up rather than down at what's going on and saying, look how bad this is. And if it means minimizing the amount of time you're around the negative, minimize that. Focus on God. Trust Him. So I want to share with you guys a story about a real fear, a real terror, and people who kept their eyes on God. I apologize, it is sad and kind of morbid, but I think it relates. In the 1950s in North Korea, it is illegal to be a Christian. And there were Christians there. They had an underground church, as in literally in tunnels. And one day the government was making a new road and their bulldozer busted through this tunnel. They were found. You want real terror? They knew they were about to die. The government pulled them out of these tunnels, brought them on the road, said, deny your faith or we're going to kill you. And these people did not. They stood on their faith. They trusted God. They were laid down on the road, and the soldiers brought a steamroller out and said, deny your faith or you're going to die. And they started singing hymns while they died. Why would they, in all that fear, keep singing and praising the Lord? Because they knew their salvation is secure. They knew where their foundation is. This is why Paul said, to live is Christ, to die is gain. When we're alive, we go on serving God. We go on trying to trust Him and follow, as hard as that can be. But if it's our end, we get to go to heaven. There's no more pain, no more suffering, no more tear, no more fear. We are with Him. This is Holy Week. It's leading up to Christ rising from the dead. If you think about that, He claims victory over sin, death, and the devil. That includes COVID-19. He has claimed victory, and we need to trust that. As hard as that can be at times, as hard as it is to grasp, we got to trust Him and keep our foundation in Him and say, no matter what happens, God's got me. I'm going to get through this. We're going to get through this, and we encourage each other through it. So now I want to share a story of an irrational fear. I share it to remind you that when fear is unchecked, it turns just into something preposterous. This is a phobia, for one. Phobias act differently because it's a fear that is irrational and you can't get rid of it very well. It's going to seem funny maybe. It's going to seem like, oh my goodness, how can you think those thoughts? It's my story. So if you want to laugh, that's great. 4 years ago, we were in New Orleans for the National Youth Gathering. The hotel we stayed in, I think, was 30-some stories high. The room I stayed in was on the 20th or 24th floor, which for me is difficult. I've never been that high in a building. Planes are different, but a room, that's terrifying. So every night we'd go to the mass event. We'd come back from it. We'd check all the kids in. Curfew would come. We'd go check their rooms. We could go to bed. I'd go to my room. I'd close my eyes. My heart rate would increase. My breathing would increase. And my mind would start to race. It was thoughts like this. What if this building falls and I die? What if I roll in my sleep to the outside wall of this building and the wall falls off and I roll out? What if I sleepwalk to the window, lean on the window, and fall out of the building and die? And my mind would go over and over and over again with these preposterous thoughts. And I would pray, Lord, you got to help me go to sleep. I can't stop thinking of it. I'm terrified. And every night I'd go to sleep and I'd wake up rested, and miraculously the building was standing, the walls were still on the building, and the windows were still in it. It's when we trust God that we put our fears back in check. It was hard. I'm not going to deny that. It was difficult. It was a very trying time. But it's seeking God in that is what we need to do. It's knowing that, hey, even these phobia thoughts, these preposterous, out-of-the-world thoughts that to some of you it's like, really? You would think the building that stood for how many years is just going to fall? Or the windows that are put in it are just going to pop out and you're going to roll out of the building? But that's what was going on. That was my fear. But God gave me peace in it to get through it. He gives us peace in this time to get through it. So we can comfort others also. So we can encourage others during this time. It's like I've told you guys, we sit there and we hold on tight to what we don't control. I'm not going to let go of this. I'm terrified. I can't let go. I got to have control over everything I don't have control over. Meanwhile, we need to let go, and God's hand's right there and He's saying, take my hand, child. I got you. God is with us through all of this. So I want you guys to remember, keep your fears in check. Don't allow them to become irrational or preposterous like my phobia. And remember, God is with us in this time. And it's a season, and we're going to get through it. When the days are difficult, trust Him. Go seek Him. Dwell in His shelter. Abide in His shadow. He's got you. So let's pray. Lord, thank you. Thank you for being a God who's there for us. Thank you for being a God who loves us and will protect us. A God who removes our fears, our phobias, our terrors, and is there. Help us through this time. Help us to just hold on to you. Help us to remember your promises in this time and just be with us in these weeks to come. In Jesus' name, amen.